Good evening. I hereby call to order the November 28th, 2018 meeting of the Gaithersburg Historic District Commission. May I have a roll call starting on my far left, please?
Frank Johnson.
Gregory Mann.
Mary Jo LaFrance.
Dean Ventola.
John Roddy.
Robert Love.
Chris Berger.
Okay, we have a quorum. For the minutes to our last meeting that we had was September 26th, I had posted some or presented some updates to them that I don't think anyone here has seen, and there were several of them. So based on that, we're going to go ahead and postpone voting on the September 28th minutes, if that's okay with everybody. September 26th minutes, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, very good. All right. And if you guys had any comments on that, I guess send them over to Chris as well. All right, next is our preliminary statement, which is as follows. This commission is empowered to meet and act under the Article 12 of the City Code of Gaithersburg. The technical qualifications of the staff of this commission and the members of the commission are on file with the City of Gaithersburg, are available on request to any applicant, and are hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard today. Each application heard today is considered on its own merits and is not to be considered as establishing a precedent for any other application. Okay, next then is conflict of interest. I'd like to request people disclose for all the ones that we're going to be seeing tonight. So I'm going to start with you.
Well,
Mary
I
Jo,
would
if you
like
have
to
any.
disclose that I am a neighbor to 16 Chestnut Street, which is, we all know is the
Okay.
fairgrounds. And I am also a neighbor and part of the same historic district for 111 Chestnut Street, although I believe my being a neighbor would not keep me from being impartial.
Okay, very good. All right. John, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Robert?
Nope.
Okay. I do have one. From what I gather, our courtesy review is by an architecture company that I think is affiliated with a company that I used to work for, the Preston Partnership. Based on that and my high respect for the owner of the company, Bob Preston, to avoid any appearance of favoritism, I'm going to preside over the review, but not provide any comments. Okay, very good. Next then is, I believe we have on the agenda the courtesy review, which is AFP-8046-2018, which is 322 to 362 East Diamond Avenue, a conversion of 2 ground floor retail units into 11 units in the CBD district. Do we have an introduction from
Yeah,
staff?
we do have an introduction. The subject property is located on East Diamond Avenue in the Old Town CBD Central Business District Zone and comes before the HDC for a courtesy review in accordance with Section 24-2274 of the City Code. The applicant, Archstone Westchester at Old Town LP, seeks to convert 2 of the 4 vacant ground floor retail units into residential units. This is the first affected elevation. And here's a closer look. And this is the other. The project team will now provide a presentation of the plans, and I will be joining them down there.
Welcome to you guys.
Thank you.
When you get a chance, kindly state your name and your, I guess, the company you're with.
Sure. My name is Ben Stoll. I'm representing the owner. I'm with Equity Residential. Equity Residential purchased 60% of Archstone. The property still maintains the Archstone name, but to avoid confusion, we are the owner and operator of the asset.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, sir?
Great, I'm Mark Drake. I'm president of Preston Drake Architects. I was the original architect on the project back in 2007 and 8 and
Wow.
9. So I remember many of the reasons we did what we did, and when Ben came to me and asked me to look at this, I said yes, I'd be glad to, and I remember many of the things we did, and so I'm the architect working on it again.
Wonderful. I guess if you live long enough, right?
Yeah, it all comes back to you originally.
Very good, very good. Ready?
So what we're doing here, do you want to talk first? or-
Sure,
Go
just
ahead.
very briefly, by way of background, we've owned the asset since February of 2013. And despite best efforts, we've hit some headwinds in the retail market. The amount of retail ground floor space at this property has proved problematic. And so we believe in converting a portion of the retail space will further activate the streetscape to residential and will actually enhance our ability to lease the remaining retail space. Retailers are very concerned about being located next to vacant retail space, but the prospect of being located next to something that feels more like townhome frontage has been interesting to some folks that we have talked to and we will continue to talk to. So our hope is to activate this street front with a portion of residential space, a little over 12,000 feet is what we're looking to convert, and then execute on the remaining retail space as retail space for the foreseeable future.
So, as Ben said, we're taking Retail Bay C and Retail Bay D, which you can see there with that one and then the next one over. We're taking those spaces and we're converting it into 11 units. We're adding some planters in front of the retail. Also, we'll get into that in a little bit. That space is set empty for almost 8 years due to lack of demand, as Ben said. What we're doing is we're taking advantage of existing parking garage, retail lease space, and existing infrastructure to create 11 new units. The new construction is concrete frame. Well, the existing construction is concrete frame, and there will be plumbing from the residential units above coming down to these units, but there are higher floor-to-floor ceilings in the existing retail space to accommodate that when it was retail, and now that it is residential, interior ceilings will still be at least 9 feet or more. The goal here is to create a residential feel on what is formerly retail lease space and create residential facades and entries in place of the former retail lease spaces. If you want to, can you zoom in a little bit on the plan? Sure. Let's see. You can actually go to the next sheet, I think, maybe. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, you can see there in red are the spaces affected. Let's go to the next one. Keep going. Here you have a little more blow up of the spaces. You can see that retail C is divided into 5 units and retail D is divided into 6 units. And you can see the new entries. The former retail spaces had I guess 2 or 3 entries, and now they're getting 5. And on the other retail lease D, that was maybe 4 entries, and we're getting 6. So we're getting more entries, and of course we're getting much more doors and what have you. You can go to the next one here. Okay. So here's if you want to zoom in on that. Here's the existing elevation that's built now. It's got storefront entries I'll just do this real quick. It's got storefront. There we go. Storefront here and along here. All these are storefront glass doors and aluminum, et cetera, et cetera. They're very commercial looking, albeit this is all rather residential looking in feel, because when we did this, we were trying to achieve a historical look for the architecture, which was part of the historical district plans. Let's see. So what we're doing now, let me see if I can zoom up here. We're going back in, and where we had a storefront entry, we're infilling with brick, our siding, and then we're putting in. Oops, sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm going around. I'll let you drive.
It's fine.
So we're having a solid, residential entry door, a 6-panel door with 2 side lights, very much like a townhome. And then because we have some considerable height in these spaces, we're having some transom windows over the top. As you can see, if you look at the right-hand side, the ground is sloping down from right to left, and we probably have 11-foot ceilings over in the right-hand side, and we're getting probably 14-foot ceilings in the left-hand side, because while the roof is straight, the grade slopes away. So you can see here we have 5 entries. Each one of these entries has got the solid door, 6-panel door, the glass side lights, some transoms, and then you see there's 2 lights on either side. The middle portion, because it has the existing columns, we went ahead and put a solid door and a transom and the lights on the columns. But we did change all of the windows everywhere to 3x6 windows, residential type windows with muttons. And then where we could, we put in transoms like on the very left-hand side, because again, we have a lot of height there because of the way the ground slopes away. As far as whatever space was, and then whatever space we had, we filled in with brick alongside those to kind of get to decrease the amount of glazing and get it more residential in appearance. So if you want to go to the next one, Again, you can see the old, let's go look at the old one. You can see the old one had a colonnade along it. It had a lot of storefront windows. It had, I think, 3 or 4 openings. It did have some kind of awning type metal projection and other elements on top of it. So we had, and those columns are about 3 feet out in front of the facade. So we're looking at the new facade. Here we are going along, and we're taking out storefront and putting in, either double 3x6 windows with transoms, or I think every one of these has a transom because there's enough height in it to get it to work that way. And then we're putting in, again, the single residential door with the side lights and transoms and lights and what have you. We're somewhat arranging those to kind of make the 11 units, and where we have, we're having, the grades aren't quite matching up, we're actually putting in, if you would zoom in a little bit on maybe that middle portion there, here we go, yeah. So in some of these areas, we're actually getting stoops because we're working the grades to get handicap access to the front door, and then we're kind of coming in from the side with the straight area, because the ground is ramping in front of us, right? And we're straight, and then we have steps over here, or steps leading out. So we're actually creating, I think, 3 stoops that we didn't have before, which is, again, more residential in character, more townhouse in character. I believe there's 2 on Retail Bay C and 1 on Retail Bay D, right around there. And then where we have those elements, we're putting in guardrails and handrails to kind of, for one thing, we have to have them by code because we're kind of keeping people from stepping off the side. We're also kind of doing it to get some privacy and to kind of, we're kind of trying to say that this is a residential entry. It's not a commercial entry. It's not a retail space anymore. And that's been our really big goal here, is to kind of get these entire elevations to look residential as opposed to the retail look that they had before. Let's see, what else can I tell you? We've also designed, can we go, actually, let's go on to the landscape drawings. Yeah, let's go back a little further. These are just black and whites to show you a little clearer. So let's keep going. There we go. Let's zoom in on that right there. So in addition to all of this, we've taken the opportunity to create some new planters on both the left and right-hand side. You can see we've done some raised planters. Then we've got some in-ground planters that are, just in the sidewalk. We're pushing the kind of the residential area out. We're not losing the 16-foot wide sidewalk that we had before. It's still pretty wide. But we are creating some areas of landscape here in front of the units to give the units some privacy, and to kind of, again, denote that it's not a retail space. You can just walk up to the storefront. We want to kind of give the residential owner some kind of little bit of privacy. The planting here is Japanese dwarf yew and Hollywood junipers. They're really shrubs. They're not trees. They tend to grow up. If you don't prune them back, they'll tend to grow about 10 feet high. We'll probably keep them pruned. And width-wise, they're probably 3 or 4 feet wide. And again, they're going to be pruned. They're not meant to be blocking the views or totally hiding the elevation. They're meant to be somewhat smaller shrubs, but basically still telling people that, you're really not supposed to walk up there and just hang out and look in somebody's windows. We're trying to give these people some privacy. Let's go to the next one, please, if you would. You can see again we have some high plant. We have planters on the ends. We have 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, those are raised planters, and then we have several areas where we have planters in the ground with landscaping, again, to kind of flank the entries and give the entries some privacy, and again, put these in front of bedroom windows where we can, to give people some privacy and some buffering space, that we don't have now because it's all retail and they want people to walk up right up to the windows. Let's see. I think that's really about all I had. It's really a very simple project, and we really tried to keep it in the same flavor and nature of what was there now, and of course as much as we can to work with the historical district guidelines. Any questions?
Well, the next thing we'd like to do, I guess, is ask to see if there's anybody in the audience who wants to speak on behalf of this proposal or against it. And I see no one.
In the audience?
Yes, in the audience. Yes, you're on stage, yes. All right, so yes, then the next then is we can start with commissioners, I guess. Mary Jo, can we start with you, please?
I think that the proposal is reasonable, and I think the designs are appropriate.
Okay, very good. John?
If I could ask Mark a question or two. First off, I didn't catch the square footage of the smallest of these 11 units. Could you tell me that?
The units range in size from about 1,100 to about 1,400. They're pretty good sized units. They're pretty deep units because of the retail space. They're going to be pretty really nice units. Big bedrooms, big closets, big spaces. So I think they're going to be actually. I think people will find them very desirable, which is good.
All right. I have one comment about the Hollywood junipers. People in this area have had marginal success with them in this kind of climate. So we would have to watch them to see, whether they survive or not. But I have one in my yard, and it's maybe a dozen years old. They're attractive, but not if they die.
They're supposed to be tough trees. They're supposed to be drought and salt and wind resistant. But we can certainly revisit that and come up with something else. But
I'm just suggesting. It worked for me. It may not work for somebody else, but. I have been in favor of this kind of proposal for a number of years. I do believe that occupancy of this sort certainly is superior to the historic vacancy, certainly at the street level. So I would be in favor of it. That's it.
Okay, very good. Robert?
I really like the design. I like how you blended it in to look like what's there right now. It's tough when something's at street level like that to not get people going up to a window and looking up. So any sort of kind of buffer that you've put between that would work great. To voice Commissioner Roddy's thoughts on it, I've been saying it for years too. We're on another committee together, and I guess if you argue long enough, I always thought that there just was never enough retail in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there kind of an issue with like loading dock areas and so forth for?
There isn't a loading dock immediately really easy to get to these spaces. They're kind of as a side street off to the one side. There is a loading dock in the garage, so you could actually bring things into the garage, but you go all the way through the garage to get to it. So, but this kind of retail honestly just loads to the street anyway, before opening or before 10 o'clock in the morning or something.
I think they were trying to look
frequently.
at. I think for like a bigger retailer, it'd be harder
There's
or
a
something.
there's
Yeah.
a slab level change too that sort of define the spaces in terms of the type of tenant that you could attract.
Yeah.
Maybe what you've thinking of historically.
And
But,
then-
the residential conversion would solve a lot of those issues.
Yeah, that's what we've talked about. So
Yeah.
I'm happy it's finally happening. I think it's going to look great. I think it's going to serve the building well, and hopefully brings in some retail tenants. So I'm all for it.
Okay. Next, we usually have open forum with the commissioners, but obviously it seems like everybody's giving you their thoughts. There's nothing to vote on, so if you have any questions for us or any thoughts other than that, thanks for coming by.
Great, thank you for the consideration.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, very good. Next then on our list is demolition permit application reviews. And we have DEMO 17932-2018, which is the demolition of two structures more than 50 years old at 16 Chestnut Street in the MXD, which is the mixed-use development zone. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Yes. The Montgomery County Agricultural Center at 16 Chestnut Street is zoned MXD, Mixed Use Development. The Agricultural Center proposes the demolition of barns 35 and 39, which were built circa 1949. The two barns proposed for demolition are not historically designated, either individually or as part of a district. The demolition permit comes before the HDC in accordance with Section 24-231 of the City Code, which requires buildings slated for demolition that are more than 50 years old to be reviewed by the HDC for architectural and historical importance in accordance with Section 24-226. As you can see from this photo, both structures are pole barns that include dirt floors, concrete block footings, wood post and beam frames, wood plank walls, and gable roofs covered with replacement metal. Barn 35 measures approximately 40 by 120 feet, and barn 39 measures approximately 40 by 90 feet. The interior of each barn is subdivided into pens to house animals. According to the applicant, the barns are outdated and there is no airflow in the summer when the fair is held. So So they seek to replace the barns with similar pole barns in the same locations. The HDC has two options. They can direct the city manager to issue the demolition permit, or if the structures have the reasonable probability of being designated in accordance with section 24-226, which is shown on the screen, they can instruct the city manager to withhold issuance of the demo permit for up to 6 months. A Maryland Inventory of Historic Properties form has not been completed for the property. The fairgrounds are listed under other neighborhoods of note in the recently adopted historic preservation element of the 2018 Gaithersburg Master Plan, with the indication that thorough research and evaluation of historic significance be conducted prior to demolition or significant alteration. And this is a photo of the barns under construction in 1949. So for nearly 70 years, the Montgomery County Agricultural Fair has been an important annual event in Gaithersburg, and the barns have served a role as a place to display animals. However, it is staff's opinion that the two structures do not possess a high level of historic and architectural significance. This is especially true with Barn 39. A structure that, or Barn 35, I should say, a structure that was drastically altered or reconstructed in the late 1970s or early 1980s to make way for a food booth to the north of it. And this is an aerial from 1939, or 1979 rather. Here's Barn 39, and you can see it stretches from this road here to this one here. But in the next aerial we have from 1982, it's been chopped off. So either it's been reduced in size or it was completely rebuilt. And both barns are built of a simple design and embody simple construction techniques, and the roofs on both barns are of a replacement material. Thus, it is staff's opinion that the HGC should not request that the demolition permit for 16 Chestnut Street be withheld, because the barns do not possess the high level of historic significance to warrant designation. This is in keeping with HTC's decision in 2012 with Demo 1855-2012, when two barns proposed for demolition on the Agricultural Center property at that time did not possess, or the HTC decided they did not possess historic or architectural significance, and they were ultimately torn down. Staff does seek a condition that reusable materials are salvaged if possible prior to demolition. And we have a representative from the Montgomery County Agricultural Center, Mr. Carl Hobbs, if you can please come to the podium. State your name for the record.
Good evening, and thank you for taking this time for us this evening. My name is Carl Hobbs. I'm the Vice President, and I'm a current board member of the Ag Center.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Please feel free to add any information you can embellish what Chris said. Or
Sure. Pretty much Chris has covered all the bases of what these buildings are currently in their current condition. The one barn, which is Barn 39, was currently before we built the new horse barn, it was a horse stalls. So the stalls are still in place, and we're trying to exhibit and display goats. So you have about a 5-foot wall that you really don't see the goats. We cannot get adequate airflow through there. We do have some very large fans in there, but we feel that with the new open span, the open pens, we'll give them a better living condition while they're at the fair, and plus display the animals much nicer in that barn. Barn 35 is pretty much the same. There's fixed pens that does not really give us adequate ventilation, accessibility, and what we're trying to do is give a little bit better egress for our fair patrons, as well as the removal of the animals as they're coming in and out to show, and then to bring them in and go home. So.
Okay. I guess next then, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against this application? And I see no one needed. So based on that, we can start with the commission asking questions, as well as providing your thoughts and your statements. So please, Robert, something with you.
I agree with the demolition. I think anybody who's been in there in the middle of summer knows how important airflow is in those barns. There's really, some of them are in really rough shape. when you go through it. I think both for, especially the animals that have to stay in there, and then anybody who has to work in there through events. I think it's very important that, they have a safe structure and also one that's conducive to what they need. So I'm completely in favor of this, and especially also since there's been prior demolition out there that was approved by this commission.
Okay, very good. John?
I would echo those thoughts. I think increasing the ventilation to create a better living condition for the animals there is very important and should be one of our primary considerations. I personally see very little chance of the requisite historic or architectural significance that would block the demolition.
Okay.
You have my blessing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go next. I have a quick question for you. For the replacement barn that you just spoke of, what kind of material is it going to be? That is it going to be wood and paintable siding, or is it going to be metal?
It will be post and beam, freestanding. We will have a 4-foot knee wall that we are going to put wood back up. The upper gable will be metal, but it will have a tin roof. We have done a design change that we're in the process of working on, better ventilation. So we're probably going to go with cupolas with ventilation. So we feel that that's going to give us a little bit, get the heat out. The roofs are going to be insulated, so we should be able to get a lot of airflow in there with the new construction. I think it'd be nice. So I think aesthetically it will look the same. Except the gable pieces, we do plan on going with steel.
Vertical, horizontal?
Vertical.
Okay, would you ever consider wood on that? Or not wood, but something like a hardy plank that gives the impression, the image of wood?
The problem with the hardy plank would be if you look at all the other parts. Now, the barn 35 and 39 do not resemble of the other barns that are there. They are vertical. So, I mean, if there is, we are going to try and match it aesthetically with the rest of the barns. I mean, putting wood up there we can do as well as steel. That's not a deal breaker. I mean,
Okay. Well, actually, that's for future anyway, so it's not really part of tonight's
Sure.
conversation. I just wanted to have a better, an overall idea of what is being replaced by. I love the architecture of this barn, but it's not worth designating. So you have my blessings.
Thank you.
Mary Jo?
I just wanted to also state that I was there at the 2012 site visit, and when we looked at the other barns, when this applicant was before us the last time.
Yeah.
And as previously stated, there isn't anything specifically interesting about these particular barns, and one of them's been modified, so, and I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
I recall, I believe it's barn 10, had the giant barn facade stapled to it
Yeah.
that you guys took down. I almost think we should have given you an award for that. But other than that, I guess then, if anybody has any other thoughts or questions, including yourself, we can just go to a vote. All right, so I'm open to a motion to approve or deny this application.
Is it a vote?
Isn't it? It's
Just
a
making
demolition.
sure.
Yeah.
It's a vote.
Okay.
a
Just
vote.
making
Demolition
sure.
permit.
So I'll make a motion.
Okay, very good.
I move that the Historic District Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report findings and recommendation, make a determination that the building over 50 years old, located at 16 Chestnut Street, do not meet the criteria for historic or architectural significance as specified in 24-226 of the City Code, and does not direct the city manager to withhold issuance of demo permit 17932-2018 with this one condition. The applicant is to salvage reusable building material if possible prior to demolition.
Second?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, so it's 4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
All righty, next on our list is historic area work permit review, HIST 8073-2018, a driveway expansion and retroactive shed review at 111 Chestnut in the R90 medium density residential zone. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Yes. The subject property includes a 1.5-story Cape Cod style residence that was constructed circa 1951. 111 Chestnut Street is zoned R90, medium density residential, and is non-contributing to the Chestnut Neem Historic District. The applicant, Veronica Enriquez Lopez, proposes 2 work items. The first, expansion of the driveway, and retroactive review of a shed. First, for the driveway, the applicant seeks to expand the existing driveway, which is shown in green on the screen, so parked vehicles can be passed. The proposed driveway expansions will be located in the front yard, which is indicated in blue, and the rear yard. The driveway width currently varies from 12 feet in the front yard to 21 feet in the rear. The driveway will be expanded to approximately 20 feet in the front yard and 27 feet in the rear yard. The existing driveway measures approximately 3,400 square feet. The expanded driveway will measure approximately 4,200 square feet. Juan Cruz, the owner of 109 Chestnut Street, adjacent to the driveway, signed a letter in support of the project. The Chestnut Neem Historic District Guidelines note the following on page 14 in regard to streets, driveways, and alleys. Changes to driveway should be avoided unless changes would present historically accurate appearance. The city code also contains requirements on pavement lot coverage. Staff supports the expansion of the driveway because it meets city code requirements. The existing driveway is comprised of at least 3 different materials, and you can see some of them here. But the original material is unknown. Staff seeks a condition that the applicant pave the expanded driveway sections with a historically accurate material, such as gravel on asphalt, gravel, or just asphalt. Staff also encourages the applicant to repave the existing sections of the driveway in a single material. The applicant has not provided staff with the exact dimensions of the proposed driveway paving, so staff also seeks a condition to work with the applicant to finalize the size and location of the driveway for the site development permit. As for the shed, the wood frame building, which is in the foreground here, measures 10 by 12 feet and is covered with vinyl siding. And here it is here on the left. At its September 27th, 2017 meeting, the HDC retroactively approved a metal shed on the same site with HIST 7720-2017. The applicant subsequently applied for a shed permit, but according to the applicant, the metal shed leaked and it was removed and replaced with this vinyl shed before it could be inspected by city staff. Staff noticed the presence of the existing vinyl shed on August 10th of this year and notified the applicant that HDC review was still required. The Chestnut Neem Historic District Guidelines state on page 21, under accessory structures and outbuildings, garages and storage sheds should be similar in architectural style as the main house. Staff supports the vinyl-clad shed currently placed on the property because it meets the design guidelines and city code requirements for the property. Staff again reminds the applicant to contact staff first before completing any changes on the property. And Ms. Veronica Enriquez Lopez is here. If you have any questions, can you please come to the podium, state your name for the record.
Good evening. I am Veronica Enriquez Lopez. I was here last year, if you remember me, about asking permission to renew some work in the house, and I coming again to try to work in the house again about the driveway, which I love the area, but since it's one-way street, we have long driveway, but we're having a lot of issues when somebody park in the front. We cannot go into the back, so I wanted to spend to the side. So if we are able to park in the side, and then we can have free to the back. Like for example, I want to share for today. in the morning I have a child that he was sleeping and I wanted to bring it to the car, and my car was in the back, in the front of the house, and then my husband's car, it was in the middle. So it was so hard for me. I always come to the back to the alley to get out from my house, and it was so hard for me that I had to back up in a one-way street, which in the morning the traffic is so hard. So in that case, if I had a permission to spend it to the side, I can park in the side and not to block the driveway, because I always have that problem every day with the cars. Yeah, and with the shed, it was the same problem. It was leaking, and it was a lot of water going through every time it was raining. So I came and asked permission for it, but I never thought that one. I still need permission for the historical, but all the inspections passed, but I didn't ask permission for the historical. But sorry, and thank you again for listening.
Well, first of all, welcome, and we do remember you. I think we all do. You're one of our best customers. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
And one of our favorite people. Before we start, is there anything further you wanted to add?
About the material, that it seems different, like how Mr. Chris mentioned. It's been having a lot of problems with the gravel and the other ones, because in the front we haven't done anything. It was like that when we moved there, and in the back, it was so terrible when we moved there. So we only decided to put gravel because it was no way to get in there. It was a lot of, when it was raining, it was very bad. So we decided to put gravel. But since right now we wanted to do this, we wanted to do all the same material and up to the back. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Did I ask about the audience yet?
Good. No,
Okay, good. Is there anybody in the audience who wants to speak on behalf or against this? I see nobody. So then we can open up to the commissioners again. So, Mary Jo, please.
Well, I would just like to say that the year our house was built, it was very common for families just to have one car. And nowadays, that's not so common. So yes, it is a very narrow driveway. And she's also correct that it could also be an awful muddy mess in the back there. So I support and understand the need for an expanded driveway. And I also would like to mention, not everyone may realize, but there is an alley that runs behind our homes, parallel with Chestnut Street, and sometimes that'll give us an extra way to get out without having to get onto the busy road.
Right.
And some of our neighbors frequently use that alleyway to transport
Got
themselves.
it. I see.
I use it every morning. Yeah, and that's why I trying to do that, because if somebody park in the middle, how I gonna go to the back? There's no way to get out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Not that it matters too much, but I guess if you could also address the new shed.
So, well, as far as the new shed is concerned, I am disappointed that it needs to be retroactive, but at the same time, this current design of the shed is very similar to an original shed that used to be in the center of the yard years ago. So I think the design is appropriate, and it matches with the other one, so I have no problem with it.
I'll go next. Chris, I have a quick question for you. It appears from the diagram, the blue marked area is obviously wider. My only question is, obviously, it's going to have a wider curb cut onto the street, which is always a big issue for jurisdictions. Yeah, so is that something that's in the city codes to allow that extra width and to actually do the curb
I
cut?
don't think we're going to be allowed to widen the curb cut
Right,
there.
okay.
And this is something that would be reviewed under the site development
Right, that
permit
was
as well.
that was my only concern. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. My thoughts on the subject, other than the curb cut, is I don't have any concerns whatsoever of you widening the driveway except for the curb cut, and I don't have any concerns to grant you personally to allow you to have the existing shed that you just built, I should say,
Yeah.
remain. I don't have any concerns with it whatsoever, and I'm actually glad that it's vinyl versus the metal.
Mhm.
It's sad that you had to replace something that you just bought, but in the end, it's going to be more conducive to the.
Yeah.
So, all right, thank you. Mr. Roddy?
The chair has trampled over my only issue.
I try my best.
I also have absolutely no problem with your widening the driveway or replacing the shed under these circumstances retroactively. I would only comment that when I moved into my house many years ago, I had a long driveway and none of it was paved. It was all coal cinder, and some of it got really horrendously muddy. And of course, this year it's been very rainy, so I'm sure you had quite a swamp back there.
Yeah.
I am very sympathetic.
Yeah. And can I mention?
Yes, please.
About the curb in the Main Street, I don't think even though he mentioned, I think it's okay like that because it's wider and I only wanted to have space to park in the side of the house. I think, I don't know, it would be a little space in the front of the house, I think.
Okay.
So we can have that space on the side. But on the core, we don't touch that. So
Okay.
that's okay.
Well, the issue is the access to the street is always an issue for cities.
Yeah.
But, so you don't touch the front part where it touches. But as soon as you get on your property, you can fan it right out. You can get widened
Yeah,
right
yeah.
away and not affect the curb cut. I think it's like maybe a 3 or 4 foot concrete strip that you can't touch.
Yeah.
But then you just fan it out. You get widened it as soon as it's on, it goes on your property.
And
So that may
also-
give you both what you're looking for.
And also we had the sidewalk there attached to the curb, so we don't touch that either.
Yeah,
So
right,
yeah,
right.
so we agree with that.
Okay. That's very-
Yeah, I just wanted the space to park in the side and have that free space to go through.
Sure.
And then in the front, that's okay. We're not gonna park at the edge of the
Oh, I see,
road.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Webb?
Yeah, I agree with the curb cut thought that you're not gonna expand it like that. And I think another thing is to make sure you're not, because you might get used to parking on the side, but then going over the curb, you could do some big damage to the curb if you get used to that, so. But I can understand if you're gonna get used to cutting it, it won't be too hard. Quick question, staff, is she coming close to her coverage limit?
Since it's such a large lot, that it's close, but not too close.
Not too, she's got some
Yeah.
more space on
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
okay. No, I have no issues with it as far as that expanding it, having some on the side. I have a long driveway, just goes in my yard, and I often have to park on the street because my wife has to get out, so that's frustrating. So at least you have the 2 ways out, that's nice. Also with the mess and so forth, especially if you're probably having to park slightly in your yard right now, and that's not,
Yeah.
that's gonna be a mess all around. And the shed, yeah, I mean, I actually like the look of this better than the one you previously brought, so it matches up with everything very nicely, so I'm completely in favor.
Okay, thank you.
There are some large trees back there that keep that back end of the lot very wet and muddy. And before I forget, I forgot to mention, I would prefer myself that the material be asphalt.
Oh, Chris, can you weigh in on that?
Can they require material?
I would probably defer that more to our site development permit to make sure that the paving section meets the city code requirements.
Well, the 3 materials were mentioned, so I thought I'd just put in my 2 cents about
I think
the
it's
one.
fine if you wanted to recommend.
Yeah,
that-
recommend.
That they go
Right.
that way, but I wouldn't make it a condition instead of the
Yeah.
approval.
Because tar and chip doesn't hold up, and gravel needs to be replaced every so many years as
Oh,
well.
sure.
Yeah,
So-
we don't want gravel anymore
Yeah.
because my
Yeah.
son keep picking and bring it inside the house. Yeah, so we
Yes,
don't
yes,
want
all
gravel.
my kids and my grandson too, yes.
I guess I would have to ask you that too. Once you have something solid, can you go back to gravel?
Go back to it?
Like I'm saying, once something's paved, I didn't think you could go back.
Yeah, you can remove it, you'd have to use a jackhammer.
Because I
but
know
it
I know
can
there's
be-
certain like
Mhm.
where you once you go, so that's it. You can replace in kind, but you can't replace.
Yeah, that's a good question for our site development coordinator, whether, once they go to asphalt, if gravel is an option again.
But didn't the city of Gaithersburg actually put about 5 or 6 feet worth of asphalt in the front of the driveway anyway? When the sidewalks were put in? Because I know that's true for my driveway.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's very close, so that is a possibility.
Just saying.
Well, I would think that if they want to go back to gravel, they would have to come into the HTC, so we
Correct, yeah.
probably don't have to worry about that tonight, because it would be before us again. And I would tend to think that if you ever tried to shovel gravel,
Oh,
they're gonna be happy with the
No,
asphalt.
yeah.
I would imagine they're not gonna wanna remove it, but I can't speak for the future yeah.
the snow blower gravel is interesting too.
Oh my, I never thought about that. All right, does anybody have anything else they want to throw in, or you can say anything further before we
I
take a vote?
have a question about what you say about the gravel and the driveway. We haven't done an estimate yet because I didn't want it to do an estimate and not to get approved. So in case, depend how much it will be, in case we wanted to do halfway through by the car is like halfway. I think by the edge of the side of the house behind of the house, not all the way to the alley. Can we do halfway of?
I want everybody to weigh in on this, but what I think we are looking for is consistency. So whatever you choose, and Chris, help me if I'm wrong, we would like you to be
The
for the
same.
entire thing.
Okay,
Same,
okay.
same,
And
same.
we're not going to require you to do asphalt. We're going to recommend it. So you're going to have that option, and you're going to work with staff as to what that single material will wind up being. But it sounds like we're going to be approving it, but if we do approve it, it'll be with asphalt as a recommendation, not a requirement. So you can put the asphalt down, but the big key is it should be the entire way,
Yeah, okay,
whatever you're
yeah.
choosing. And if it's gravel, I guess if that's
No,
one option.
gravel is
it'd be
not
gravel
the
the whole way.
Yes.
Right. Or whatever third material, it'll be that third material the entire way. That's
Okay.
what the staff is recommending, and I believe we all are in agreement with that. Is that correct, everyone?
That's correct, and I think
Yeah,
some of the
okay.
conditions here kind of speak to that
Yes,
as far as that
yes,
uniform, so just
yes.
kind of keep that in mind. I know you're kind of saying a half and half, it's got to be the
Okay,
whole,
okay.
the whole
Yeah.
material the same.
Right.
Okay. I have another question.
Yes, please.
How big can be in the front, like Mr. Chris mentioned, after the curb? How wide can be? Or is a code limit? Because I wanted to try to have a space for for example, my husband has a truck. I wanted to have a space for a truck on the side and be able to pass in the side, to the back. So how wide is any dimensions or?
I can work with you to calculate and tell you exactly how big you can make it.
Does the city have any requirements for where trucks are parked? And the reason I ask that, in my neighborhood, trucks are not allowed on the street, they have to be garaged.
To my knowledge, no. we
No,
don't have
but
requirements.
I'm sorry, I
No,
have
no, go
a
ahead.
big car, like the Suburban is wider, like.
So it's not a commercial vehicle?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no.
Okay.
Is there a rule as far as how much you can cover your front yard as far, I assume
Yes.
there's probably something like that. I would just think, anything that's in the code, the staff will be able to work with you on that as far as
Yeah.
letting you know the width
I-
and everything.
I was looking at it, I'm not sure if it would be about around, I'm not sure exactly, about 5 foot in the front of the house, something like that. So I can have space to go through. I'm not exactly sure, but it will be not by the edge of the line of the house. It will be going to the front, I think.
I think, if you work with staff, they'll let you know, they'll give you
Okay.
the exact, I'd probably provide some plans on what you're talking about, exactly what you want, some dimensions, and they'll be able to work with you, let you know if it's within code or not.
And that will be acceptable to us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do
You
I
won't
have to?
come back about
No, you don't have to come back. You have to come back.
Okay, I was gonna ask that.
I knew we were getting somewhere with that.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
all righty. Then I am open to a motion to approve or deny this application.
I'll do it. Based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony and the staff report findings and recommendation, I would move that the Historic District Commission grant HIST 8073-2018 to expand the existing driveway and the retroactive shed review, finding it both to be in compliance with section 24-2272 of the city code with 3 conditions. 1, the applicant must pave the expanded driveway with one of the following materials: gravel, asphalt, or gravel on asphalt, and we would strongly recommend asphalt. Second, that they may pave the existing sections of the driveway to match the material selected for the expanded driveway areas. And third, applicant is to provide the staff for review and its approval the final dimensions of the expanded driveway before submission of a site development permit application. And staff has indicated a willingness to work with you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
That's it.
anybody have any thoughts to add to those conditions before we, okay? All those in, I'm sorry, second, please.
I'll second that.
All righty, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for your time too.
You're welcome. Have a great evening.
Good.
One thing
Yes.
I'd like to say real
Sure.
quick, if you don't mind.
No, please.
To answer Robert's question earlier, when the city of Gaithersburg, it changed to the brick sidewalks on both sides of the street on Chestnut, which it used to be only on one side. There was no sidewalk on the other. There were driveway mouths that were added, and especially to the property of 104 and 106 Chestnut Street, because the thinking was that the driveway was going to go around the house. Well, when that wasn't approved, and there was a easement granted so that the 2 owners could share the driveway, there was this big, awful black asphalt thing there that wasn't going to be used anymore.
Okay.
And so, at the time, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, who owned the house, took a jackhammer, broke it all up, and then buried in the ground instead some waffle-shaped stones that the grass could grow up under.
Oh, right.
So a delivery person could come. But it looks beautiful
Right.
now. All these years later, it's green grass, you would never know,
Right.
and then just the curb cut is there.
About that.
So you know, it can be removed.
I can't, okay. All right, excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next then on our list is for another historic area work permit. It is HIST-8064-2018. Installation of emergency phone at 5 South Summit Avenue in the CBD, Central Business District Zone. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Yes. The Gaithersburg Railroad Station was constructed circa 1884. It is zoned CBD, Central Business District, and is individually designated as historic. The map I have on the screen is outdated, but it gives you a general idea. Of course, the railroad station is in the same location. Here's where the proposed phone will be. The Old Town Plaza certainly looks different now. The city of Gaithersburg seeks to install an emergency phone with beacon onto the wall of the rear bump out of the railroad station. The phone is required by the Montgomery County Health Department for the Old Town Plaza splash fountain located about 100 feet to the north. The proposed location, which is indicated with this arrow, was selected because it is the closest location to the fountain where the necessary phone infrastructure is present, which you see on this other photo below. This past summer, a temporary phone was placed inside the train station's waiting room until a permanent solution could be found. According to the specifications provided by the applicant, the steel wall-mounted CB4S speakerphone will measure 13.375 inches tall, 10¼ inches wide, and 6 inches deep. And also note that the phone will require review by the Maryland Historical Trust because it is in a easement. Are there any questions?
Yes. Is the rear bump out an original part of the train station or an addition?
To the best of my knowledge, I believe it's an addition, but it would not have been built more than 10 or 15 years after the original train station.
So it has historic value,
Yes.
in other words. Okay.
What kind of signage do you envision that would indicate that here is the phone? And
I think
for
the-
somebody who is faced with an emergency.
Well, I think it has emergency on the side here, and also the beacon, I think, will stand out.
All
But
right.
other than that, I don't see any. don't think any other signage is proposed for them.
Is there any representative today, or Chris, just, should we ask you questions?
Yeah, you can
directly?
ask me questions.
I noticed here in the photo that there's a curb mount pole. And when you look at the phone, I'm very concerned about the phone being mounted to the brick building. Even if it can be removed, you'd have to adhere it with something, and it could be disruptive to the brick, putting holes in the brick. Could it be considered to use a curb mount instead? So the pole would be mounted to the ground and not the actual historic building.
From my understanding, it's going on the wall so it can connect to the infrastructure which is located on the other side of the wall. I don't know if it's possible to do that if it is not on the wall, but I can certainly ask our Public Works staff if that is a possibility.
I would just like every effort to be made to protect the building. I know that train station already is having some problems with
Moisture.
the brick surface and the moisture and it being fragile already. And I would hate to think that could cause some damage that would be difficult to repair, and also over time. Let's see, do I have anything else? That's it for that.
Okay, I'll go next.
Thank you.
That is an excellent point about the potential possible damage to the brick. I tend to imagine that the box, which seems small, may only have 4 bolts into the building, and they'll drill it, I imagine, and use mollies, I imagine. Might even be less than 4. I don't know. But aside from that, I think it's going to be very valuable to anyone who is in need of it. So I'm all for it, obviously. Mr. Roddy?
Agreed. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Love?
I agree with that. That's become a area where there's a lot of people now. I mean, they're using the fountains. Anything that's for safety, emergency, put it on there. It's got to be big and wide and able to see it. I think maybe, I think that light will stick out. I don't know if you guys want to put something else that says emergency phone here, maybe direct that, think about something like that, just
Okay.
in case people don't seem to notice it. I think the blue will stand out. Have you thought of maybe a brighter color too, like?
Will it have the blue light? Because to me, that probably is the best thing. That's, people actually look for that. They can see that.
Okay. I'm talking even the box itself.
I'm saying the blue box. That was the first thing that I thought. It wasn't my favorite color, but blue is now known as a safety zone.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so I would
Now-
think we want to change that color.
Now, does it light up? I'm just thinking at night when it gets dark out there, is there gonna be something shiny? Am I gonna be able to see that, or someone's gonna be able to see
Isn't
that?
the strobe going to be
It
lit
will,
at night?
from what I understand, the strobe is only lit when someone's on the phone, but keep in mind the fountain is not on at night.
Is
Well-
there a light on it? I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I'm wondering, and I know plans for the area are to maybe do night events, is what I'm saying. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering, is there something else that we can get to kind of light it up or something? Some sort of marker, just thinking about that.
How can you see it at night if there's no
Well, there
light
is
on it?
there is lighting that's on the property.
But will
The
there be
aerial's
a
not
light
going to show you
shining
anything.
on it, I
but-
guess, is
Yeah.
what we're both thinking. Your thought, but I'm in agreement with it, is how do you see it if it's not lit? 'Cause
There's
it-
lighting coming down. You can't see in this photo too well, but underneath the eaves of the train station, there's
Is it a
security
spot?
lighting.
A spot?
I don't know if you would necessarily call it spot lighting, but this area is well lit here because
Okay.
of crime deterrent efforts.
Okay.
Okay, just, I guess that would just be a recommendation, if it's possible to maybe make it a
Yeah.
little more, just some sort of light or something
We
on
can
it.
definitely broach that with our Public Works
Yeah.
Department to see if there's additional lighting is necessary.
Yeah, if something like that,
You
that's what I'm
might be
just.
able to mount something underneath the eave,
Yeah, that's what, I mean,
Would
maybe an
shine
extra
on it.
one under there or something would be.
you know.
And it sounds like, if I correct me if I'm wrong, the commission seems amenable to that without having to come back to the commission,
Oh,
correct?
sure.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but again, I'm still concerned about it being mounted to the brick wall. I would like I don't know how
Well,
to
the
put
door,
this.
the door that's there in the photo, I apologize if I
No,
interrupted you.
please.
Is that a functioning door? I mean, obviously, the one that's open is the way in, but the door to the addition, the historic addition, is that a functioning door?
Yeah.
Do you guys use it?
That's, I
never
believe,
used
the
it,
only
but-
entrance into the utility
Into
closet.
that is, oh, okay, because I was gonna say, because if that's not used at all, that would be a great place to mount the,
And what are we looking at on the ground here too? Because we can see the central air and different things are coming in from this other side. And what is on the ground here? Is that a drain? The
Good
little
question.
round
I
circle
cannot
on the,
tell
right
myself.
on the bricks?
yeah, if you can
Oh.
blow it up.
Yeah, right there,
It looks like a,
What's a drain?
maybe a utility cover.
right there.
That looks like an electric utility
Oh,
cover.
yeah.
Is the door a double door into that unit?
Yes, this is
Okay.
two
Is-
doors.
Is it like, it almost looks like it's narrow, but it's hard to see from this side.
Yeah, they're two narrow doors.
Because here's what I'm wondering. It's not something I'm gonna push for, but could the box be mounted to the face of the door? Because that then would not harm the brick whatsoever.
True.
I'm not trying to push it, but I always like to, if I have an idea, and I never say it, and somebody later says, wow, I wish I knew it at the time. That's why I always mention. Since it's utility, I don't believe that you're required to have a 3.0 door anyway. So if these are two 2.0s, there's a chance that you can mount one on the leaf that is inoperable. It's worth the thought. Also, are you going to have electric wire mold on this thing, or is it just going to go directly through the brick?
I think it would go directly through the brick. That's the
Yeah,
plan.
the only thing about that is then you're going to put not a sizable hole, but you're going to have a conduit and it's going to have a hole. So
And then if you go, I'm sorry, Chris, if you go back to the original advertisement picture, now the bottom corner on the right-hand side, you can see, right, is it gonna look like that?
he's saying no, it's going to go right through the back, isn't that right?
Okay.
So
Correct,
they're
yeah.
not gonna, that's the wire mold. They're not going to have that. How about this as a possible thought? If there's electric access down right below which you pointed out, is that live? Is that still operable, or is it like a conduit that goes into that building? So, is it possible to explore that possibility? And if it is,
Yes.
then maybe a conduit going from the unit down
Mm-hmm.
isn't going to be as offensive as
Mhm.
going up, and then maybe you don't have to drill a giant hole through the building.
Mhm.
Just a thought. These are just
Exactly.
thoughts. I'm not majorly concerned on any of this. Safety is the most important thing, and it's a small box. It's not going to be seen by too many as visually offensive. But Mary Jo's point is well taken, that the brick, we all know, it has issues now, and adding more holes into it isn't really going to help it. So, but I believe we're going to be voting on this, and I can tell you that
Yes.
you'll have my vote to do it.
So how would we, well, I guess my next question is, I don't know how much support I have for this, but how would we form our recommendation and our vote? How are we gonna vote for it? Like,
It
we
sounds
don't
like,
do it as a condition, we do it as a condition.
what condition?
We would, ask that all avenues be considered before it were to be
I think
mounted
that's
to the
a
building.
wonderful thing. You can put that
Right.
in. It's a recommendation, not a requirement. And before we go too far, I do want to ask, is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak on behalf or against this proposal? And I'm doing it for the record, okay? And there are,
Thunderous response.
and there are none. I just want it on the record. So, I guess, do you guys want to weigh in? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think as a recommendation, that's fine, I don't think it's a solid condition, but, I mean, they're hearing us now, we're on the record of saying what we kind of want to look at, so all avenues with, both the insulation and possible, like I said, lighting, I think
Okay.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay, all righty. Then I am open to a motion to approve or deny this application.
I move that we approve, based on the exhibits submitted in the staff report, finding and recommendation, grant HIST 8064-2018, emergency phone installation, finding it be in compliance with 24227-2 of the city code, with no conditions, but with a recommendation that the city staff do the best they can to try to find a way to attach the phone without having to put it on the actual brick wall, and to make sure that there's appropriate lighting so people can see the emergency phone for its use.
Very good. Anybody want to add anything to that?
Nope.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. That's 4-0. Congratulations, Chris. All right, next thing we have discussion topics is the single and only one on this discussion topics is something called the impact review areas. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I'm teasing.
And my question is also, have you been following along? Has any of you watched any of the videos when you missed a meeting, what discussions there were, and read the minutes and so forth? And now,
Before we go too far, do you want to, Chris, say anything
Well,
on
we're
behalf of
hoping,
the city?
we've talked about it
First.
at multiple meetings, so we're hoping that tonight is the night where we receive direction that we can take back to Mayor and City Council, whether this is even something you want to pursue, if you feel like courtesy review areas adequately cover those areas adjacent to historic properties, or if it is something that you would like to request that the Mayor and Council pursue and attempt to implement.
Okay, all right, good thought. All right, let's go round robin. Robert, would you like to give your thoughts?
I mean, we've had the discussions here. I've watched the other meetings I watched what is. I just can't get past the idea that we would kind of implement something on individuals who didn't buy into that, I guess. I just can't, for whatever reason, I just can't get past that. I think, well, a nice idea, I think you have a historic district, there's your historic district. I think we start expanding, and then, not saying it's not gonna end, not gonna go farther than that, but I just, I think to impose that on, I think you would have to have, now, would the owners have to sign off on this? I never
No.
just,
No.
see, that's, I have a big issue with that.
one of the things, Robert, just to clarify, in the last meeting when we discussed it, Dean and I talked
Yeah.
about it, about only for new development.
Yeah.
That would take out all the residents and the people that you're most worried about. So just so you know,
Yes, sir.
I'm thinking that's where we're heading with this, but that's why we're having the discussion.
I mean, I would even have fine, I would be even a little fine with it if it's imposed on a property and only when that even an existing property sold, you would kind of say like that. I'm more inclined to say okay for that, but if it's just simply new development, but is that really the goal you're searching for on that? I know that
It's
the
all
initial
discussion,
goal was,
yeah.
with that.
It's up for discussion because all of us, have a different background and experience, and
Yeah.
I thought we could find our way through it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like I said, I said that from day one. I appreciate
Yeah, yeah.
the time, the effort, the research you did in this, and the thought. I get the thought behind it. I just think we have the borders for a reason on where it is, and
Right.
then to keep expanding that, because I mean, long after we're gone here, they could try to expand again and again and again. And I mean, I guess maybe it's from working for government like that, and then creating extra time for things. Like you said, it could add another month or 2 months to someone who wants to do something that really didn't sign up for that. I think that's a tough sell, and I don't even know. I'd have to ask Frank the legalities behind something like that.
Isn't it like takings? Isn't it part of that you?
Well, the takings issue would impact if you so restricted the use that you really limited options so that they wouldn't be able to use it. So it's not likely you'd
Okay.
you'd hit a taking issue, and that's part of what we were looking at with the past demo changes from a few years ago. But, I mean, that, looking at an impact review area, certainly, I mean, the code already does contemplate that. It's just a matter of defining what that is.
I think that would, I mean, that would have to be, I think that, I understand that you need to have flexibility within the code, I get that, you know, that's so you can do certain things, you know, usually to help people out than hinder them, but, you know, maybe that needs to be a little more defined in that as far as that, just to kind of cover everybody, but those are just kind of my thoughts behind it, and I've really thought about this when I was looking at it, and for some reason, I just can't get that out of my head the whole time, so that's where I'm sitting right now.
Okay, very good, thank you. John?
I share his concerns to a degree. I used to do the zoning work for the District of Columbia a long
Wow.
time ago.
George Washington.
Yeah. And I you know, there are reasons for the boundaries, but I think this is important enough that we should recommend that the city fathers look at this in the future. But I do agree we have to provide them with better definitions of certain things. I mean, you've hit that topic pretty well. That's my thought.
Okay. My thoughts are that the properties, we already talked about, they already presented this, the property quantity versus the percentage that will come before us, I don't believe would be troublesome to the commission. That is, we would not be taking on a whole lot of extra work. I also like the idea that it can help prevent some troublesome development, particularly for new development only. To me, that's probably the most important thing. Love the idea that you presented all this. It's remarkable that you even thought it through, and I think it's something that we really should and have looked at. I do have a concern for pushing more restrictions, pushing restrictions upon homeowners that bought in and have lived maybe their whole life, whatever, to push it on them. So I am open to the idea of when a property gets sold, perhaps, but my biggest concern maybe would be for new developments, and so I could certainly get behind that. I can tell you that in most of the 8 years we've been all working on here, maybe almost 9, I've had strong opinions about almost everything. This one, I don't have a big, strong opinion on anything other than maybe the new development stuff, because it's the unknown is always a factor to me, always. So I would say perhaps based on so far what we heard, maybe guided towards that. That would be fine by me. Now, before we go for you to speak, I can say that maybe we want to have, so you're suggesting that we can wrap it up tonight. I think that it would be nice to have the other commissioners
I agree.
Weigh in, because I tend to think maybe one will be for, one will be against. I don't know. It's not my business to say. Let them say it. But maybe we should have it. The other thing, too, is I'm not sure we were ready for that tonight. I know I wasn't ready for a final decision. If you need a final decision, you already have my thoughts on it. It's the new development. Other than that, I'm not sure I would really push for the other existing homes, even though in a perfect world, it would be great to have.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah,
on that?
please.
You were talking of new developments and worry about that. I mean, there's most codes I know they're going to have restrictions in there, right? Buffer zone and so forth. They're going to have to go through planning commission and various other entities that make sure that you're not, that's why you have the zoning, you have all that, to make sure certain things aren't built next to each other or are so egregious that it's going to impact that. I mean, that's typically how those are built up. So that would be my thought on that is, unless you're currently seeing it somewhere, there's usually some sort of restriction on it already, as far as, like I said, setbacks, buffer zones, anything to that effect.
True, but that's leaving the design, the historic nature of a potential design, to, to respect the historic nature, up to the planning commission, and not necessarily with us being involved. Because once the plan, when we go through planning commission, we really don't have any say in any of that, so they can approve or deny something that,
If it's out of a historic district.
no, I'm saying it wouldn't be, it would be on the perimeter.
So,
It would
I
be
mean,
on
on
the
the,
periphery.
on
Yeah.
that, but it's not in the historic district.
No, it's
Like I
not,
said, I
no.
think that's,
That's why I'm saying that they wouldn't even, probably even ask for our input. And I think it would matter if something that was extremely modern was built along the residential buffer area, that's all. So am I very strong in favor of, we must have this? No. I can live with whatever we all want, I'm fine with. So it's not a big issue for me one way or the other, even though I think the new developments would be nice because it's the unknown. So go ahead, it's all for you.
Well, what I do want to say, directed to Robert's concerns, is that, and I've seen this happen before, on our little Chestnut Street, the building that's next to the train tracks that is now, I think, some kind of, pest control place. There was a time where there was a consideration to build an apartment building there. Well, it's residential. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Yes, this is residential, and yes, an apartment building is residential, but is that appropriate in that area where there's already, a small narrowed street and so forth? So I bring all of this up. The neighbors, of course, didn't want it. That squashed it. That was the end of that. But these are the kinds of things that historic districts face over and over and over again, which is why I think it's very important to have a little bit of a boundary that is sort of protective, or at least we can be called to the table. It gives us a chance to be called to the table. And we're not really anything more than a cursory review. We are not going to be allowed to implement anything legally on these entities, but we can give our wisdom, our advice, and strong suggestion, which may also be helpful with the planning commission and so forth. So you have that, what really is residential in a residential neighborhood, that could happen. And as far as not wanting to lasso people and make them feel like, oh, how did this happen to me? Absolutely, if we would like to consider approving an impact review area for the time being, and each, as those properties sell, they come into that area, and that way the new owners will be aware of the situation. I would be absolutely 100% for that. And then we've covered new construction, and we've covered slowly over time the incorporation of these properties, and no one will feel bamboozled.
Okay. Do you think then it is something you would like to have presented to the commission, a choice for us to vote on, whether we want to have courtesy reviews for new developments and/or
Bless you.
courtesy reviews for when properties get sold? So you would have a vote
Right, so the
for
45,
separate votes
right,
for
right,
each,
yeah.
and it would be a yay or nay on each. Does that sound like it would be?
If I can interject real quick.
Sure, please.
The way the code's written, actually,
Mhm.
it's not if it's new construction or not. It just states that any impact review area requires essentially a courtesy review for any site plan review that goes before the planning commission.
Right, but.
So what you're asking to do by just doing, my opinion is if you wanted to do just new construction, that would require a further step of a text amendment to the code, which again, I don't, it's,
So we
I-
have to leave
You're
it kind
adding
of
a
open.
condition
Yeah.
that's not
Oh,
there
okay.
now.
I
So
got
you're
you.
saying
Not being
don't
specific.
limit it. You're saying
Yes.
that we
the
cannot
code doesn't
limit it.
allow you to limit it.
Oh, okay.
Or
It's-
if you want to make that recommendation, you can, but there would have to be a change to the city code because it's not a condition that's there now.
Well, isn't that what this is all about anyway? I thought it is trying to
The
change.
code already allows it. So
Allows the
it
impact
allows
review
impact
areas?
review areas to be implemented. They are currently not implemented.
It's just by address,
Okay,
essentially, not,
Okay.
not other conditions such as sale or new development. That to add that in would require a code change
Okay.
to allow that to be considered,
Well,
that's
then
all.
that's always.
So that might be
uh,
part of your review, or
Well,
your
but that's always a
consideration.
higher wall to overcome, so if we can avoid that, that would be nice. If it's already granted, that's the potential, that's wonderful. So my question then is, if the impact review areas are in the code, is it just a matter of us defining which parcels?
That's what we need guidance on. If the commission wishes to move this forward to the council for to see if they wish to look into this and
Mhm.
implement them, because the way the code is written, the council has to do it by resolution, which properties. We need guidance from the commission on which properties, or
Okay.
Which I
it doesn't
believe is
necessarily
the
need to be every
45.
property that is abutting a historic district, is what I'm trying to get at.
All right.
But you've already given us properties, 45.
Chris has provided you maps outlining all of the properties that could be implemented
Okay.
as an
What-
impact review
What
area.
if we limited it to, and tell me if this sounds right, to commercial and industrial parcels that border the historic district? Would that be acceptable? Because those are the ones that are the most potential conflict with the historic area visually. Does that sound
that allowed?
acceptable?
Yeah.
If those parcels are the ones that, yeah, because you said it's,
But that would require the code change.
oh, I thought you said the
Anything-
impact
anything-
review
Any
areas.
kind of
Anything residential or
definition we
commercial.
make. Sorry.
And then I'm unclear, because I thought.
Well, no, maybe it's set by the council which properties are impact review areas by
That's my
resolution.
point.
So you could, I think, set them to those
Correct.
properties
That's my
that
point.
are.
Yes.
And we'd have to look up the addresses and
Yes.
do it, or by tax parcels.
That's what
But
I'm
yeah,
implying,
I think I
yes.
Okay.
Not implying,
understand what you're
that's-
saying.
We
that's
can
what
get you a
I'm
list of those
indicating.
properties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just be
Yeah.
identifying the specific
Yeah.
addresses, and you
Not the
could
use.
decide which ones to
It would be-
identify.
It would be coincidence, I guess, or not.
Understood.
But that, the big key is that if it's already on the books, that's a tremendous value to us, rather than try and have somebody, an entire change in the code was always difficult. And so I think that this may be the path of least resistance, which is always wonderful, but it also may give us our hands on, and again, it's just courtesy review, our hands on the most volatile, potentially volatile structures that could impact the historic area. So I like that
And
idea.
then
Do
we'd
you
be
like that
privy
idea?
to all the studies. We've talked about this before with the, what Greg Mann does when, what the traffic studies look like, right?
Well-
And all of that, so we'll be
You would be,
privy to
it'd be
that
in your
too,
packet,
right?
but your purview would still be the review of this
It would.
as it relates to architectural
Yes.
significance
Yeah.
or related to the architectural.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, traffic,
It's all planned.
yeah, that's all part of the planning commission review.
Right.
So,
Right.
that is
But it
pretty
would be part
clear.
of the information, because that can be important as far as deterioration of the properties are concerned, if there's added traffic and all that, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and again, that's covered in the code of how that gets reviewed and if what requirements, if there's improvements need to be made or not.
Okay, well, does that sound good to everybody here? As far as that is the direction we would like to see done. I'll touch on another subject of the people who are not here in a second, but it sounds as if the four of us are believing that a courtesy review for parcels that may mostly visually impact the historic nature of the historic district are of importance to us, and the particular parcels will be supplied to us by staff, and they would be most of the ones that are potentially
Could be redeveloped.
redeveloped, but the ones that are not going to be innately residential quality. So if that sounds okay to everybody. Next, did I too many words on that?
No.
Okay.
I think that's what
Yeah,
you
forget that. Yeah. The next question for everybody here is, do we relay our information now, because we can, or do we want to wait for the other commissioners, which we may not always have a full house, but at least we'll have them. I can say I do believe that Mark has already pointed out that he is in favor of the modern being next to, juxtaposed next to the historic. So he said that on more than one occasion, so I know he's fine with that issue. So do we wait for it, and do chime in if you think it's not possible or not desirable for us to wait, because the next meeting will be in January.
I think that Commissioners Feinstein and Kurtz have had multiple opportunities
Okay.
and they've made their
Okay.
points.
So are you guys fine with voting on it tonight? And essentially, okay, all right, so then I guess, do we do a motion? Is that sound proper, or do you know in essence what we want?
I think we know what you're getting at.
Very good, all right, so there you go. Anybody else have anything further before we move on? Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank
All
you,
of you.
Mary Jo.
Yeah, hey, wonderful, seriously. All right, next is, do we have anything from staff?
Other than to remind you that we're not going to have a meeting next month, December.
Oh,
So
You can come.
That's phenomenal.
our next meeting will be January, or scheduled for January. And
Okay.
a reminder that we do officer elections the first
Okay.
meeting of the year. We haven't done that the first meeting in the past few years.
Oh, my.
Right, because it's always
But-
been bad weather.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
do if it's gonna snow? I mean, if it
And we're hearing
snows,
it might.
how do we know when it's canceled or not?
Yeah, well, I think if City Hall's closed, then.
Wait, yeah, if there's a
it'll be closed.
snowflake, it's off. Does that sound okay to everybody?
So happy
It'll be on the
holidays
city
to all.
limit.
Thank you.
You too.
Alrighty. Next is from commission. Anybody have anything that they would like to add from commission?
I'll come up with something new for next month.
Oh, okay. Well, then you'll be
For next
alone.
month.
You'll be alone, because we won't be here. So that's it?
Next time.
So
Anything else? Okay, we're all adjourned. Very good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, everybody.